This is the Realty Classroom Podcast, episode number 209. What to do in a market crash. Are you a real estate agent who wants to build your real estate job into a business without sacrificing your lifestyle, but you just can't seem to find the right plan or any plan to help you get there? Well, then, hey, you are definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Realty Classroom and the host of this podcast. Now, to help you take immediate action to get started in the right direction, I've created a free jumpstart course for you that's waiting at freeagentgift.com. That's freeagentgift.com. Get over there, get yourself a copy. It's a nice one-page infographic with a little bit of a walkthrough on the video as to what I did to put my business in a wireframe that really changed everything, especially helped me get into the luxury business. Yeah, all those secrets are over there. Not so secrets, by the way. All right, what to do in a market crash? You've got to do this one. I hope it stays evergreen, so that anytime you hear this in the future and there's a market crash or correction, I give you a couple things to think about. But we are in the beginning of one right now. Things are changing. Interest rates have just jumped an historical 40% year over year. I mean, a massive increase. Actually, now, since the beginning of the year, there's been 100% increase in the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate. So the change is big. And the reason is that we are coming out of the end of the COVID-19 pandemic era, where the Fed printed an enormous amount of money. And of course, what that did was caused massive inflation. Now, to get a hold of that inflation, now they're going to raise the Fed funds rate, which is not the mortgage rate, right? That doesn't, it is not directly a mortgage rate. Just understand that. If you have no idea what interest rates are really all about, the Fed funds rate is the rate which member banks lend money to each other overnight. I know it sounds like a weird thing. You can go Google that, get a little bit more detail, but that echo effects out into the general economy. And in the general economy, the effect is typically a correlated relation where as the Fed funds rate goes up, so do mortgage rates. And the 30-year, which is sort of the benchmark these days to look at, is up massively. Well, of course, when you have interest rates go up, then what happens is there's an inverse effect eventually with real estate prices. Again, that's a one-to-one relationship. And of course, economically, there are an enormous amount of variables to take into consideration. But the good old Latin saying, ceteris paribus, holding all other things equal, we'll just look at the inverse relationship between interest rates going up and prices going down. So given that massive, fast, lightning fast increase, historically fast increase, you're going to see prices come down. I don't care how delusional the sellers are. The pressure is there. So, for example, I look into a lot of different marketplaces as a coach, one of which I'm thinking is the Metro Phoenix area. And in Metro Phoenix, the inventory, so as things, meaning the number of properties that would move, well, it's a weird stat too. Let me explain that. I'll just take a little pause and slow down. Inventory is measured by, if we took all the properties that are available for sale right now and they were absorbed at the rate they've been being absorbed at, there would be about a month's worth of supply. That just jumped dramatically by 308% in Metro Phoenix, 87% in Scottsdale. In Boston, it started to drift back upwards where it had already been way up historically because people were fleeing the city because of COVID and violence, etc. So, man, do we have a lot of variables. But I'll guarantee you one thing's going to happen. Prices are coming down. It was like everybody that was a seller and a buyer was a drunken sailor for the past 24 months, and they just chased property through the roof. And I will tell you, a lot of it was luxury. Luxury went bananas because there was so much money in the economy and so many people were making real money and companies were being bought out that a lot of those people were transferring it into a hard asset, meaning real estate. So a lot of smart, wealthy people will park their money when the stock market goes crazy and there's a lot of liquidity in purchasing of companies. They'll put it in a hard asset like real estate. And all of a sudden, residential luxury real estate became a very, very big play for the wealthy, including hedge funds. I mean, for the first time in one of my primary markets, Cape Cod, I started to hear of hedge fund money coming into the marketplace. That's the first time I've ever heard of that on Cape Cod. Now, I've heard of it for many years in Boston. That's one place, but money was finding residential property. And there were a lot of I-buy companies. Zillow got in the business of buying company buildings and residences and owning them. And they got in big trouble because they couldn't get in and out of them. And they weren't in that business. So crazy. It was like the Wild West, right? I just don't, well, greed. There you go. The ugly side of capitalism is greed. When things get out of control and everything's heated, everybody gets greedy. And that's the first point. Nobody's logical. So the first point to you is don't panic in a crash. Be logical. And what I mean by that is, you see what I did in the intro to the podcast? I went to meaningful specifics. This is a big thing that I talk about on this podcast and in my coaching company and with my brokerage, with all my Griffin agents. Be a meaningful specific, not a wandering generality, which means what? Don't just say things like, oh, the market's crashing. What does that actually mean? Typically, what it means is the market's correcting. I have to say the market's crashing to get your attention. I know what buzzwords get you to pay attention, but that's what it is, relatively speaking. I mean, if a price comes down 20, 30, 40%, you can call that a crash. It's a heavy correction. So that's what's happening. And what happens is most real estate agents panic. And they stop being logical. So what I implore you to do is pay very close attention. It was like it was an Italian version of me, right? A close. So you want to pay close attention. My grandmother would love that. So you pay close attention to statistics, real specific statistics. And one of the ones that I like the most when you're trying to keep yourself logical is the sold to ask ratio. So the final sale price, the real SOLD, versus the final asking price, not where it started, but where the last asking price was. I'll give you another example, meaningful specific. Here you go. In Seattle, where my brokerage is now licensed with my partner out there, we saw 107% sold to ask on average, meaning what? That those prices were being bid up in Seattle, an average of 7% over their final asking price. And suddenly, within a month, it was at 97%. How about that for a flip in stats? So buyers in a frenzy going 7% at least on average over. So double that, they can, be out there 14, 15% over, right? Versus say 7% the other way. And so, you've got this distribution. It's crazy, right? But all of a sudden, boom, the correction is a normalization. See, typically in a normal, evenly balanced marketplace where there is nothing going on crazy economically one way or the other to the extreme, you'll typically see a couple percentage points, 3 percentage points on average being given up when the final asking price is corrected. Sometimes sellers get that correct right off the top. Sometimes they don't. And that's what negotiation's about. So you see, these are meaningful specifics that tell you, oh, okay, well, finally, the good news for my buyer in Scottsdale, my buyer in Metro Phoenix, my buyer in Seattle, good sign for them. There's some leverage now. It's not a frenzy. There's evidence, and very specific evidence, that buyers are being able to negotiate finally something less than the current asking prices. So that's also now insinuating that there's pressure on asking prices. So now you start to watch closely to the average price. What direction is that going in? I would make an argument too that you might all be better off paying attention to the median price, the middle number, because that'll shift in general. It's the number right in the middle. So if we have month statistics, they're going to pick the middle number. Whereas the average can still be skewed. If luxury remains this really hot place and more corporate money's coming in, your average could actually go up, which is really bizarre, right? So if you don't understand all this, it can be confusing. So keep it simple. Just be logical. Pay attention, because most buyers, when they see the interest rate go up to 7%, they're the ones that panic and they bail out. Okay? So you want to be showing them what's in it for them in a correcting market with those stats. Now, with the seller, you want to tell them, look, don't panic. Okay. The drunken sailor party is over. People aren't just going to walk into your house and give you whatever you think they should give you. And as long as you have a real reason to sell, let's go through my 7-step plan. Let's get you prepped up and let's get you ready to go. And you'll be ready to compete because there still are a lot of buyers that have to buy. And if you have to sell or really, really want to sell at a high motivation, we're going to make a market for that. Now, let me go to the next point here. I'll get off of that now. Meaningful specifics, be logical. Next point. Don't idea hop. I see this in my coaching all the time where we'll have the mastermind. So I coach one-on-one all these top producers, and then we get in a group, and all of a sudden you'll hear this, well, I just started this. Now, most of my clients have been with me for a long time, so I've stopped them from just idea hopping. It's like they jump from lily pad to lily pad to lily pad, thinking the flies are fatter and juicier over there because things have shifted, right? Tide shifts, and I better get to that lily pad. It's the stupidest thing we could ever do. I mean, really dumb. Really dumb. Well, I'm going to go get some, buyers now. I'm going to go get some sellers now as the market shifts. Well, first of all, you should always be looking for sellers. Always. No matter what the market's doing, you should be trying to do business with sellers who have a real reason to sell. And quite frankly, I've never been in this business for 23 years, and I've seen multiple ups and downs, crashes and expansions where sellers didn't sell. There's never been a time when it went to zero. There's been some hairy times where as you get to the top of a market, there's a little kind of a quiet, it's like the eye of the storm, right? All of a sudden, everything's hot. And then there's quiet at the top and then it starts coming down. But as it comes down, buyers start to jump in, right? Same thing in the stock market. All the smart money, everything's been crushed. Technology, some of these companies have been crushed. I mean, look at the price of Facebook, for example. It's up around 300 plus, and now it's $130. This is a company that throws off a lot of cash. So a lot of smart money managers start to take notice, start to buy it on the way down because nobody tries to time the bottom. That's what smart Wall Street money does, right? So you don't want to start idea hopping away from sellers. It's not a good idea. In fact, quite frankly, in a market crash, a lot of agents will go by the wayside and they'll quit. And what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to come in and counsel these sellers who really have to sell on how to win no matter what the market's doing. And there are many more of them that need quality help. So you don't want to idea hop away from sellers. Furthermore, you don't just wake up and say, oh, it's time for buyers. Okay, great. You're right. Buyers are going to have a little bit of better time. But what do you think? You're going to convince somebody on muscle as a wandering generality that they should come off the sidelines and buy? Why? So what I did the other day was, again, I emphasized to my mastermind, you got to stay with the build out of your prospect list on the sell side. Quite frankly, we've been expert at expired cancel withdrawals now for quite some time. We just got a whole bunch of possibilities. We were doing it all the way through the expansion. People don't think expireds, cancel withdrawals happen. Well, they do for a lot of reasons. And we did really well with them. Now we're expert at it, and the inventory of those people expanded. So I have no problem having seller conversations. But on the buy side, I really have always liked the opportunities that open houses give me. In fact, I know you'll think I'm crazy, but I'm just one of those people. I'll never forget Jay Leno talking about, why would he go to Malibu and do a stand-up skit in a small little comedy, joint when he was making gajillions of dollars after he took over for Johnny Carson? Because it kept him sharp. And that's exactly what open houses do. I love being in them and having real face-to-face conversation with consumers. Right? And I encourage all my agents to do it. 90 minutes of hard work on a Saturday and a Sunday this weekend. I'll do both. I love it. I love it. I sound like Gary Vaynerchuk out there, doing his garage sales. I love open houses. And so that's been great for me. But there's also a new opportunity that I saw doing these open houses. There are a lot of inbound wealthy buyers that don't even know there's a crash going on. You hear what I'm saying? So your perception is everybody thinks the crash is something to wait around for it to come and go. That's not my experience at the high end. I'm sitting in one of my open houses that I got through an expired call and follow-up, etc. And I work that thing like a mule, right? We go in there and we work that, and all these people come in that are well-heeled, meaning they have dinero. They have the money to pay cash or get a mortgage easily. And a lot of their mortgage money is part of an overall wealth portfolio management situation. So they can get themselves a better rate based on that. So that's my experience, is that there's a lot of inbound buyers. And I saw them running around with agents that I'm like, maybe I can head some of this off at the pass. So I'm thinking opportunity. Where are these people inbounding? Are they inbounding on Zillow? Are they inbounding on Redfin? That means they're inbounding on Google. So what if I run a little campaign test and see if I can't get some of these luxury inbound buyers coming into Cape Cod and Boston and get them prospected under my wings? Make them a really good buyer offer to provide them a list of sold properties so they can see what the smart money's buying. So they don't come in and do something stupid, because even though they're not affected by a market crash, they want to get a good deal. See what I mean? I don't have to idea hop. I just think good strategy. A clarification moment happens when a market goes wildly up or down. You have to become sharper. So I don't idea hop. I just refine my seller techniques, and I see if I can expand my buyer. There's no like throwing the rock out here and jumping in on that one, right? I mean, what? That's not strategy. That's insanity. It's immature business, right? Don't do that. By the way, I've made all these mistakes, so I'm not chastising you. I'm saying probably should sit here next to myself, or a caricature of myself, chastising the old me as I talk about this, right? And so that's the third point here, is that you have to identify have to sell sellers and smart buyers. You see, in that pool of expireds, cancel, withdrawns, for example, you might be looking at probates, where somebody's passed, for sale by owners, referred business from professionals. All my clients, my coaching clients, they all make a business decision up front as to what their core competency is for the beginning of a seller conversation. But within every one of those piles, it's not that one pile is better than the next. It's just an opportunity to find have to sell sellers. Now, that's easily determined by asking somebody, why do you want to sell, and listening to see if it's a real reason, then further qualifying, gee, interesting. On a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you? And if you don't hear 9 to 10, you're not there yet. Find out why not. So you find them and you focus on prospecting them. And then the smart buyers are the ones where you start to give a message. And I did this. I was going to say this early in the podcast. I went to my website, thegriffin.co, and I pulled up one of my featured properties, and I started playing with the math and the mortgage calculator, which we build into every property. Right? I said, look, you see, this property was here, and you probably would have had to pay this at 3%. At the beginning of the year, it was about 3.6. Now it's 7-ish, right? So let's say 3, 5, and 7. So it doubled. So how far down does the price have to come so the principal and interest payment is the same? You look at a smart buyer and you say, if I could get you that same principal and interest, wouldn't you rather have that good buy? Because you can always refi that number, which the probability of that coming down over the next 24, 36 months, pretty high. So in the lifetime that you're in this house, let's say it's the average, like most people, 7 years, you're definitely going to get a refi opportunity. So if I could get you a good deal now, there's a probability that's high, even gets better. Come on, let's go looking. It's not rocket science, folks. So the solution here, right, to all this is really rooted in what I said. Stick to building a list of prospects with a real reason to sell or buy. That's the key. They're not going to necessarily turn over when things are in the thick of the perceptive crash, right? Before the crash actually happens, everybody panics. Everybody pulls the oar out of the water, and everybody has an opinion. But then it happens, and that's when opportunity occurs. So in the meantime, you can get into these conversations educating must-sell sellers, right? And smart buyers. It's easy. So let me go back and say what to do in a market crash is simple. Don't panic. Be logical. Stick to the stats. Think meaningful specifics. 2, don't idea hop. Don't stop doing one thing to do another. That's just not smart, ever. 3, identify have to sell sellers and smart buyers. And the real solution here, number 4, is stick to building a list of prospects who have a real reason to sell or buy. Let me summarize it this way. When the real estate market crashes downwards, most real estate agents become panicked and start idea hopping. In the worst cases, they quit the industry altogether. The truth is that a market crash is an opportunity to find sellers that must sell and buyers who are smart enough to recognize that they can buy real estate at a great discount even early in the crash. The key is to stay focused on building a list of prospects that you're educating in real time so they easily choose you the minute the window of opportunity opens even slightly. All right, remember, you can take immediate action and get started in the right direction with our free simple business plan that's waiting at freeagentgift.com. Also, don't forget you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We also post our content on YouTube, and we're trying to do more and more over there. So go over there and give us a subscription. Click over there with the bells and whistles to the Realty Classroom channel, and you'll see all of the content as soon as it's uploaded. We'd also appreciate it, of course, if you would share the content with other agents just like you so they get the help that they need. But remember this, I sign off the same way every time. Nobody's coming for you. Absolutely nobody. So go get to work on your business, and we'll see you in the next episode to help you do just that. Thanks.